So there's a viral video going across the internet, and it's basically this mountain man dude who was being charged for illegally fishing out somewhere in the wilderness near a city. And although I think the video is really cool, and I think the dude is passionate, and he's definitely pointing out the corporate fascist Federal Reserve banking cartel system that claims authority over all living things. I think there's a couple problems with his views. That I think that if he were to become aware of these flawed views, he would become a more empowered man. So let's start here.
Those men were charged by me right back by staging an overthrow of the Constitution of 1789, an overthrow of the Bill of Rights, an overthrow of my rights to forage for food as a natural living person who was in hunger. I was searching for something to put in my stomach, as I am recognized to be allowed to do by universal law. Has nothing to do with your corporate fiction.
Nothing to do with your corporate fiction. He's right fucking on. He's absolutely right. The problem is, number one, he talks about universal law. Now, I understand the temptation to want to claim there is an objective law standard out there somewhere in the cosmos from which protections for you on a moral basis exist. I understand we have the impulse to want to believe in a God or an objective, externalized set of rules that you take no part in, but is simply true for all living things because something else has determined it. Be it a God or the laws of nature. Even the laws of nature, there's kind of a causality problem. You still have to ask, where did the laws of nature come from? And if that's your basis for the moral code you believe in, the universal laws, the very eloquent mountain man poses, there's still kind of a cause and effect question. Well, where did the laws come from? So there's kind of a creator intention behind even that. So the problem, of course, with believing in universal law is, number one, it's not real. Because, and hear me out here, even if the universal law was true, by what standard is it true? Okay, let's say I think he cites God or the Bible, or he mentions like I think he does mention the Bible, or he mentions like the divinity of how we all come from the earth. If you believe God created this universal law that protects you, by what standard does that law protect you? By what standard of morality does that law actually have value and validation? When you really think about it, any moral code that comes from God is not actually moral. It's just what the most powerful being in the universe has proclaimed and imposed upon reality. If God has a moral set of rules for the entire universe that we all have to abide by, well, that doesn't mean that it's actually moral. It just means that the most powerful being in the universe has mandated it. Okay? And that's why there's a lot of different gods from many different Bibles and divine holy books throughout the world, not just Christianity or Judaism, but many different religions, Islam, and even more primitive religions. If you think about it, they all have a certain degree of, of things that most of us would disagree with. Some gods call for this evil thing, and that's part of the problem when you place your faith in an objective set of moral codes. You are outsourcing your responsibility, your proclaiming of the values you have. You're outsourcing it to some external thing, almost as a way to either minimize your responsibility for those values, or to help reinforce them by saying, well, I didn't come up with it. Little old me didn't come up with these values. An externalized, objective God in the sky came up with them. And so that's part of the problem with this, is that there is no natural law. There is no universal law that protects you or your right to go kill animals and eat them. Okay? The only law is yourself. The only law is me, is you, is sentient beings demanding their piece of the pie. The cosmic pie. Because again, even if God mandates it, it's not actually moral, his code. It's just that he's the most powerful thing in the world. And ultimately that is what determines your state of being in the world. It's the extent to which your power as an individual can accumulate prosperity and allow you to cultivate the kind of life you want to live. Whether you want to use your power to be a tyrant or you want to use your power to be a motivational leader to help other people. You see what I'm saying? So let's go a little bit further here to 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Filed in 3 forms.
I do not understand those charges.
Number one, you keep interrupting me, and I'm going to charge you with contempt, and you'll go to jail.
Contempt of court is spelled C-O-double-N. I know about accounting. That's navigation.
Sir,
contempt is the storm.
I said, be quiet until I get
Don't
through.
touch me. You ain't a gun. Don't you touch me. I am the living man protected by universal law.
You keep talking, and you're... Be quiet until I get through.
Don't touch me. You ain't a gun. Don't you touch me. I am the living man protected.
Don't touch me, you ain't a god. I am the living man protected by universal law. Well, he's kind of implying he believes in God there. He says, you're not a god. I'm the living man protected by universal law. Now, I can't really know exactly what his theological views are, but he most probably believes that God created the universal law, or he believes the universal law itself is the embodiment of God. So he's right on. This fucking old fucking whore who's fucking like nagging him, like fucking, don't keep interrupting me, like she just has that authoritarian teacher smugness to her, where she thinks she's like this fucking tyrant because she serves tyrants, so all she could help but do is be a little mini tyrant in the fucking little courtroom. Evil witch. I hate these authoritarians, and the worst part is these authoritarians are fucking everywhere. Everybody, because they serve an authoritarian system, they can't help but be their own little miniature versions of tyrants. Whether it's your fucking teacher or the fucking administration at schools, your local school. I mean, when I went to high school, the administration, they were a bunch of authoritarian, like, prison guards, basically. Walking around with, like, walkie-talkies attached to their fucking hips. Fucking, 10-4, we got students over here having too much fun. We got cracked out over here. Walking around with their hands on their hips like this. Just prancing around. Just authoritarian Nazis, man. Man, schools are fucking prisons, buddy. They're fucking prisons. But anyways, so the problem, of course, with saying that this judge lady is not a god, when the mountain man proclaims, you're not a god, well, he's right. She isn't a god. But there is no fucking god. Either she's not a god, or we're all god. Okay, that makes like fucking no sense to some of you. I'll explain it. So by implying that she's not a god, he's implying that there is something else is God. That there is a God. And of course, that's usually the God that most people get their values, their morals from. The problem, of course, goes back to what I said earlier. Just because God, the most powerful being in the universe, says something is universal law, says something is moral in the way it should be, doesn't actually make it moral. It's just what the most powerful being in the universe has dictated to the masses. I mean, that's authoritarianism. That's basically, serving Hitler because he was the most powerful guy in Germany and almost took over the whole fucking globe. Okay? Serving someone's will, whether it's a mortal man or God, simply by the fact that I'm God and I'm the most powerful thing, I'm the be-all, end-all in the universe, well, that doesn't mean that what God commands for the universe is moral. It just means that it's what the most powerful thing in the universe has dictated and mandated to the world. Dictated. Dictator. Authoritarianism. So, again, I think that's the new paradigm shift, is realizing that there is no objective external thing, institution, person, belief system, law, physics, natural law, universal law, that we can just outsource responsibility and culpability to, and representation to, because it makes it easier for us to make our point. It's a lot easier to sell your morality, your viewpoints about the world, if the most powerful being in the fucking universe called God has mandated it to the world. Now, if you imagine a preacher just going into a church and saying, hey, I just came up with morals based on what the fuck I believe, not what God believes, but what I fucking believe, and I want you all to believe me. I mean, that's called a cult. Jim Jones. I mean, when a man, an individual man, proclaims that he is the own determinant of universal law or how the world should be lived and experienced, well, that usually ends up creating a cult, which is fine. I have nothing against cults. I think everything is cults. You know, what is a cult? A cult is a leader and followers. Well, that's the essence of society. The essence of society is leaders and followers. There are people you look up to, people who are more confident than you, and because they're more confident, you feel more convinced that you can follow what they do because they're confident, aka powerful, capable of, you know, cultivating their reality. And so you follow what they do because it's a lot more predictable. So really, at the core, that's the problem. You know, it's the tendency. It's so much easier to validate your self-interest, which is really all that governs the world. It's individual units of consciousness, whether it's a human or an animal or shit. You can even argue a fucking plant. You ever seen plants growing in time lapse? You know, time-lapse footage where they speed everything up over a long period of time, so you get to see like 3 weeks of time condensed into a minute. You look at time-lapse footage of plants that growing in the fucking forest, dude, they grow like, you literally see them, they look like life forms, you know, combating each other, fighting, leaves trying to crawl up, you know, vines crawling up tree trunks to get to the sunlight. It's this giant war going on just amongst the plant world, reaching up toward the sun. So the idea, of course, that, you know, somehow freaking, you know, plants are not sentient, well, I'm not too sure about that, which of course will make most vegans diarrhea their pants. But anyways, so, you know, that's where it all is. It's individual self-interest, individual entities that are aware, subjectively, experiencing the world, and that is the only standard, the only measure by which existence can even be considered. The only way morality can be considered. Morality stems from self-interest. All conceptions of morality stem from self-interest. Because even if morality, the ultimate morality, came from God, even though there's like a million different kinds of moralities, because a million different kinds of humans over a million different types of fucking years, you know, a million different years, they've been coming up with their own fucking religious viewpoints based on their own subjective self-interest. I mean, the subjective self-interest behind religion is so fucking obvious and apparent, and it's all, you know, relevant and relative to each geographical region from which that freaking biblical viewpoint arose from, whether it's Christianity, Islam, whatever the hell else it is. So it's about realizing that, you know, at a core level, all these views about the world, even if it comes from God, okay, it's still God's subjective self-interest. It's God's will. You know, they say God's will. It's just serving something because of its power. And the illusion, of course, is to believe that you are not part of that power. That the power isn't for you. You're not divine. You just fell from grace because two people, Adam and Eve, 80 billion years ago, well, 2,000 some, whatever the fuck it was years ago, according to the Bible anyways, 5,000 years ago, you know, Adam and Eve had a fucking apple, and you had no part in that, and now fall from grace, the sin of man has sinned, and now you're at fault because you're just a mere mortal, a flesh human who is not capable of achieving enlightenment and empowerment and divinity to the extent which God exclusively claims over. That's the illusion. The illusion is to believe there is an objective realm, being in the sky, or institution, or belief system, or set of natural laws that are somehow above you, and that you have no part in, but you are a servant to those. Okay, to believe that is to succumb to tyranny. Okay, they say obedience to God is resistance to tyranny. No, obedience to God is fucking subservience to tyranny. To serve God simply because God is the most powerful thing in the universe is submission, is slavery. You see? And of course, if God created us, then we are a reflection of God. So even if the whole religious Christian Islamic viewpoint of an objective God that has divine power over us and that we'll never be like him, we're just his little fucking creations, we're his little minions, even then, the the idea that God is above you, well, then that implies that you're less. Wait. We came from him, but we're somehow incapable of finding our way back to his level of divinity? No. I think by even all standards of logic, if we came from God, we can find our way back to God. Because at some level, in the creation of us, there is a connection between the thing that created us and what we became, which was, supposedly God's creations. Well, we have the essence of God. It's like trying to hug somebody without leaving, skin cells of yourself on them, without having an impact on them. We are all interconnected. We are all interwoven. There's no separation between us and that supposed God. So once you realize that you are God, or as close to God as there'll ever fucking be, that there is no fucking reason why you should consider yourself any less than the supposed divine gods in the sky, well, then you realize that it's not so much that he's God and I'm not. It's that we're all God, or as close to God as we'll ever fucking get. And that is true oneness. That is true coming into immersion into the world you live in. To feel separate is to put up boundaries, walls between you and the rest of the world. And that is an illusion. That is a flawed way of looking at it. So again, I praise the mountain man for having the balls to go against a tyrannical system. But I think that one of the next paradigms we have to overcome is the belief that there is an objective standard beyond the individual just proclaiming his self-interest. There is an objective standard that determines what I think is right and wrong and how I have to live my life. That is a weakness. That is a form of fear. That is a fear of taking control of your own life and saying, but the standards I have aren't created by someone else that I don't have to take responsibility for. No, the standard that you believe in are your own, based on your conscious self-interest. So true empowerment, true enlightenment, true awakening is to realize that you are the one in control. You are the one awake. You are the one conscious. You are the one looking through the world and setting standards based on your values as a self-interest based individual. So yeah, again, props to the mountain man. He's got balls. The next step, of course, is realizing that it's not that the old whore and the fucking judge, the old judge whore, it's not that she's not God, but there is a God. It's that we're all God. And to believe that you're not God is to sell yourself short. It's to cut yourself short. And that's what leads to so much of the fucking discontent, the ego, the wars, all these wars based on separation. It's all interconnected, man. But true immersion, true awakening is to realize that there's nothing separate from you that is somehow more divine. You're just as entitled to divinity as any divine being from any holy book.